Okay, so we've started recording and we're going to officially start the presentation since it is 1 o'clock. We're going to start with a round of introductions here. We all work at Career Services Center and we are all career development specialists. So we work with students in a capacity of seeing appointments, helping with document reviews, practice interviews, mock interviews, helping with job searches, things like that. My name is Jessica DiLello and I help students predominantly in behavioral and social science pathways and also education pathways. So if you schedule an appointment and your major falls within one of those, you'll probably be set up with either me or one of our graduate assistants.
And I'm Jessie Barclay, and I am also a CDS, like Jess said, and I work with agricultural and natural science students.
Perfect. And we also have Danica. As you can see, she's on video as well. Danica Ryan, do you want to introduce yourself, Danica, real quick?
I'm a career development specialist as well. I work with students in visual and performing arts, liberal arts and humanities, and world languages and literature. But I will turn my camera off now. I'm going to be working in the background, helping with the chat and everything like that.
Yeah. So thanks, Danica. So Jessie and I will be presenting today, and Danica will be kind of monitoring the background. All right. So without further ado, we're going to jump in today. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get started. So we put this presentation together because we realized that we had lots of students coming in with traditional civilian or general resumes, and they would come in for an appointment with us and they were applying to jobs that were federal jobs. And we realized, hey, you need a federal resume for this. So we really wanted to get the word out there that there is a difference and that when you do apply to federal positions, you do need a federal resume. So we decided to come up with a presentation that's just an introduction to get you started to say, hey, there is a difference and this is kind of what it is. So we designed this short 30-minute presentation as a slight introduction into what the differences are between a civilian and a federal resume. Now, what this presentation is not, it's not an in-depth, this is how you set up your federal resume and all the really in-depth intricacies, because the deal with federal resumes is they're very unique to the job that you apply to and to your field and to the very specific experiences. So we're going to recommend to you that you set up an appointment with one of us at Career Services if you are applying to a federal position, so you can get a review for that if you need further help and support. But this should definitely be a good start for you to get started so that you learn some more about what those are. And we're going to give you a lot of resources today that you can take with you and do some more research and get started to take your regular resume, get it going, and then turn it into a federal resume. Okay, so that's what we're going to get you going today with that. So that's basically the start of what this is. Now, we wanted to start today. These are the things that we're going to cover. So when I said that we're going to share a variety of things, we're going to start with a general resume. I'm going to show you what that is. Jess is then going to dive in with the federal resume, which is, I'm sure, what brings you all here. So that's where the bulk of today's presentation is going to be. Then we're going to show you USA jobs and then TagCrowd. Anything else, Jess, that we need to talk about?
No, and again, what we've learned working with students, Jess and I work with a lot of students applying to federal jobs. I have a lot of ag science students. So the example we're going to be using today is ag sciences, that some of their best options are federal jobs. We just want to give you the resources to make sure that you're doing everything you can to be a good candidate to get that interview. And we'll go ahead and just start with the resumes. So I'm excited to see what Jess has to say.
Perfect. So I'm going to dive in and share with you, we're going to start with the civilian resume, because before we dive into the federal resume, we've got to show you what the regular resume looks like, and then we'll show you the differences. So we'll start with the regular resume. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the regular resume and what that is, but just in case, I wanted to share with you Career Services website if you're not familiar. If you go under the Students tab right here, you can see my screen, right, Jess?
Yeah.
Okay. The Students tab right here, if you go down to Build a Resume, my computer is a little slow, bear with me. On the Build a Resume portion of Career Services, we have tons and tons of information on here to set up your civilian resume checklist, action verbs, tons and tons of great material. At the very bottom here, we have resume samples for a variety of majors. I'm going to pull one up as an example. So in behavioral and social sciences, a lot of my criminology majors apply to federal jobs. So I'm going to pull up crim as an example. Feel free to use our templates for your job application process. So go ahead and use them, download them, type right into them. We do recommend using our templates because they're a lot more simple to use. They're concrete, good information. A lot of stuff on the internet is not so good, as you probably figured out if you've started the process yourself looking and working with a resume. There's a lot of trash resume templates out there. Additionally, on Microsoft Word, there's some not so good ones as well, with graphics, fonts, pictures, things that we really don't recommend, sections in the wrong order. So check out Career Services as a good, credible site.
Yes.
I don't want to spend too much time on the general civilian resume, but I do want to point out some of the basics. You know, the sections are all fairly in the same order if you compare it major to major. So the stark things that you're going to notice for a civilian resume is it's one page, short and to the point, pretty concise. The biggest thing that I want to show you is, let's see here, education. It starts with the education section. All the experiences are in the same format. The dates are aligned on the right, so it's really easy to skim and navigate. For the experience section, I want to point out that it has the place, the dates, the job titles, and then they have a couple bullets describing what they did. And there's not a ton of bullets, and they're fairly concise and to the point. We do recommend to people that you tailor it to every job that you apply to. So you're not sending out the same resume to every single job. You're tailoring it to every job description. So you really want to be specific with the content that you're talking about and the things that you're talking about for jobs that you apply to. But this is a general overview. You have the place, the job title, the dates for the content. And then at the bottom, this is where it might really be individualized to what you have. So honors, activities, skills. Sometimes you might have different titles. It might say leadership if you've served leadership opportunities. Sometimes it might have volunteer experience. It might just vary depending on what you've done, and that's really individual to your experience. So again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that, but I wanted to show you just a general civilian resume.
Yeah, and I think that it's great for you guys to also know about these civilian type resume examples we have, because they can be a good starting place for your federal resume. And you know, we'll get to questions at the end, but if it's okay with Jess, I'll go ahead and start sharing so we can get right into the federal resume example. So I have worked with a lot of wildlife and fishery students recently, and most of them are looking for federal jobs, which is kind of great. Can you guys see my screen? Perfect. So out of all the places I've been doing research and finding great examples, Colorado State University has an amazing federal resume example. So I even emailed them and thanked them for this. We will be putting one together eventually, but for now, we're going to use this. One of the main differences between a federal resume and a non-federal resume is the length. And it can literally be as long as you need it to be. I've had students who were undergrad have at least 4 to 5 pages if they had a lot of experience they wanted to talk about. But you definitely want it to be much more in length than the other, and then more of the civilian resume. The top is going to be pretty similar. You're going to have your name, your address, your email, and your number. And what we don't have on this example is something else that you can also add. In these federal resumes, it's also kind of important to add your citizenship, especially if that's a huge part of when you're reading the requirements. If it says US citizen required, then you do want to add your citizenship citizenship at the top. You want to add the different locations that you're interested in. A lot of federal jobs are going to have multiple locations for one job posting. And when it goes through the applicant tracking system, it does look for those locations to be on your resume. Another really big difference between a federal and a civilian resume is, well, both of them use applicant tracking systems, which is a computer system that scans your resume to look for keywords that's on the job description that matches your resume. And it usually gives you a percentage of how much of a match you are before a recruiter sees it. Both civilian and federal resumes do that. But the federal resumes, it's even more important because a lot of times that system is really going to make a huge difference on whether someone's going to look at your resume. One myth that Jess and I have figured out is that it's not that it's only a computer that looks at your federal resume, but the computer looks at it first. So you want to do your best to match it. And that's why having the citizenship, your locations that you're interested in. If you have a veteran's preference, that's really important. And if you've worked for a federal job before, to have your GS number. And that's just a quantifying number to tell them what level you are in the government. And we're not going to go a lot into that today, so don't worry too much about that. A lot of that is in USA Jobs and is explained pretty thoroughly. You do want to start with education. That's usually a great place to start on most resumes, especially if you're an undergraduate. And it's okay to put your high school. They do sometimes like seeing that. I would also, other than what is in this education, I would go ahead and add your GPA. It's not on this example, but it is something you should be adding on a federal or a non-federal resume. Some of the big differences, Jess went through what to put into work experience, and it's usually just the job, where you worked, and a couple bullets about what it was you did. On a federal resume, you need to not only put where you worked, but the address, the physical address of where you worked, the exact timeline of how long you worked there, how much you made, whether it was hourly or salary, a supervisor's name, their contact information, whether you can contact them, and then also how many hours a week did you work there. Now, this is also important to put if you have relevant experience that was volunteer experience, you would just put 0 and you would put volunteer, but it's still really important that you add that information. Now, when it comes to the bullets, Jess is going to tell you guys a little bit about KSAs, and that's what we really want to kind of dive into when we're thinking about the content of our the bullets on your resume. And Jess, do you want to go over those now, or do you want to go over those in USA Jobs?
I'll jump in now. That's good. So I think you guys are probably seeing the trend that federal resumes are very similar to the civilian resumes. It's just more information. So as you can see, there's more information with the physical location, the salary, the details of the supervisor. There's also more information for the bullets. So as you're seeing this example compared to the last one I just showed you, there's more bullets. There's more included on what they have for each one than the one I just showed you. And that's what all these details together, that's why the federal resume is a lot longer. It's very typical for an undergraduate to have 2 pages, and that's pretty standard for a federal resume compared to the civilian resume. Now, let's talk about those KSAs. So Jess mentioned KSAs, and that's something very popular. If you start reading about federal resumes, or if you go to a training on federal resumes, you'll hear that word flung around time to time. And this jargon is like, what does that mean? What's the deal with that? How do I analyze what a KSA is? What is a KSA? Well, a KSA basically stands for knowledge, skills, and abilities. And that's what they're looking for in your content of your resume. And you want to make sure it's really clear. So again, knowledge, skills, and abilities. And that sounds, basically what it sounds like is what it actually is. So basically knowledge is, you want to demonstrate on your resume what the body of knowledge is, right? So the body of information, that can be through your education, that can be through your bullets. You just want to be able to demonstrate that. The skills piece, that's something that's actually observable, or something that you can actually carry out, something that can be seen or done or practiced, right? So that might be public speaking, or a computer software program, or something physically that can be observed. And then you've got the ability, right? So the ability might be like your competence or your ability to do something. A lot of times the ability is used synonymously with the skill a lot of times. But that could be like the ability to communicate orally and in writing. So that's an example of what that might mean. So Jess, we have both been talking a little bit about tailoring your resume.
Yeah.
But so here's the deal. So in your bullets, it's really, really super important that you are writing really, really clearly and concisely, especially in a federal resume, how you demonstrate those knowledge, skills, and abilities in a federal resume. Because if you're not showing that, they're not going to see a federal job, they're not going to see how you qualify. So you want to look at that job description. You want to see what are the qualifiers for that position, what are those knowledge, skills, and abilities that you think and you identify for that job, and how do you have those experiences that are going to qualify for you. If you don't write them down on your resume, if you don't have that really clearly, plainly outlined, and I mean exact wording from that job description, it's not going to fly for you. So not only are federal jobs competitive, but you've got to take the time to really spend time on that resume. And that's where the time goes into it, with those identifying the KSAs and figuring out how your experience really demonstrates it. So diving in there, looking at those bullets, you'll notice that these bullets are you want to be very skill-based and really say how you demonstrate those and use that exact wording.
Can you hear me now? I'm sorry, I lost you for a second. Okay, perfect. So a couple other things just to kind of go over. Thank you so much. I love the way that in this resume, they're very specific about the different skills, about the different types of technologies they use. And that's what Jess is talking about with the KSAs. It's making sure that you're as specific as possible based off of what the job description describes. On a federal resume, they do want to know everything as many times as you have done something. So if, let's say, one of the KSAs is customer service, they're looking for someone who has great customer service, and you've literally done customer service and excellent customer service in every job you've ever had, you need to repeat that phrase in every job that you list on your resume. It's not one of those things where, oh, I talked about it in this first job, so I don't have to talk about it in the second job. No. You want to talk about your skills as many times as you have shown them. So that's another thing that people sometimes have a hard time grasping, because we're usually fighting for space on our civilian resumes. We don't have to do that on our federal resumes. You do want to list your most relevant information. So look, volunteer work, field work, studying abroad, basically anything that is related to the skills that you're going to be seeing in that job. And you're going to see those in the job descriptions, which we'll show a little later. Definitely a work experience section. And if you see, this person definitely had a lot of great experience, and they really, really took some time to describe that. One thing that I've had really great success with my students is creating a relevant coursework section, especially if most of your tangible skills come from the classroom and things that you actually implemented and learned in the class, whether it was a project or a lab that you did, but it's directly related to the job. Actually adding this relevant coursework section and being detailed about what you learned, especially using those keywords from the job description to talk about it. And a good thing to think about is, if in the job description it says zoology is a really important subject to know, if you took a zoology class, list that and talk about the elements that you learned. And that's what this example does a great job of kind of explaining. You do not have to talk about every course you've ever had, but only the ones that are most relevant, and make sure you're adding those details. Now, every person in this presentation has a different journey, has different experiences, and you're going to have different sections that are going to be important to the industries you're applying to. So I would even break up your relevant skills section into its own section, any other certifications in its own section, and really highlight those. You can add presentations, you can add research, anything that's going to help them understand exactly why you're qualified. And this is a great example, but there are always more, there's always better examples for you, because that is how this works. Every time you put anything together, it should be personalized to you and your industry. So that's kind of an overview of some of the main differences. Just what am I forgetting? Because I always forget something.
I think that was a great overview. I want to point out some similarities as well. As I showed you before, you'll see that a lot of these bullets, they start with the action verbs. They're not full sentences. There are different styles of doing things, of course, and there are different subjective views of how things should be done, right? But I really like how these start with the verb. And if it was in the past, they're all past tense. And if it's something you're still doing, it's present tense. I just want to point that out. But yeah, I really like how you went through all of those. And I think we've covered a lot of the basics. And again, this is just an introduction. It's hard to go into all of it really in depth and for such a wide range of an audience, but I think that is a great introduction, Jess. Good job.
Perfect. Well, I'm gonna stop share, and Jess is gonna take you guys into USA Jobs, and we have a couple other resources we want to talk about. Just so you have all the tools that you need to really get started or to enhance your already started presentation.
All right. So if any of you are interested in a federal job, you should definitely get familiar with usajobs.gov. And I believe someone from our office, Allie, had shared in the chat some of our resources earlier in the chat. So this was one of them that was shared. So usajobs.gov is a website that has federal job postings. Not only can you search for jobs on there, but you can also, there are some other opportunities on there that I want to show you. So let me go ahead and sign in. So if you want to use all the capabilities of the website, you will want to create an account, okay? So what you can do is it's a free service, it's a free thing to do, and this is the federal, I mentioned it's the federal government's job website, so it is legitimate. This is the official one. I just want to point that out. So you can search for jobs on here. Now, a lot of my students, especially in CRIM, are interested in FBI, CIA, some of those agencies. For some of those jobs, they do have to apply through those agency websites. They have their own separate ways of doing things because of the intelligence restrictions. But you will see a lot of them, the jobs are still posted on here as well. Even though when you click on them and go to apply, it will take you to their website. So I just want to point that out. So this is how you kind of navigate that. But the reason that I brought you here today is I want to show you some of the resume capabilities and some of the events and other things on here. So I'm already signed in. I have my account all ready to go. But I wanted to show you, if you click on your name, you can click on the document section here. And this is what's really cool about it. So while we normally don't recommend to use template builders and things like that that you find online, you may consider it for a federal resume. They do have a template builder through USA Jobs, and it might help you to get started if you want to make sure that you're not leaving something out. So I want to show you how to do that. So if you go to the tabs at the top after you log in under your name, there's a document section, and the document section is where you can upload different versions of your resume if you're going to apply for things. So I have some up there that I've played around with. So if you create one in Word, for example, if you have your regular resume, just how Jessie had already showed you, you can surely take your regular resume and edit it and add in all those details if you want, absolutely. And I do recommend doing that. But if you want to play around and use their template builder, you just scroll down, and right here is where you can find it, upload or build resume. You click build resume. You get it started. Obviously, you wouldn't name it that. But what's really cool is it kind of walks you through each part. So, so that you're not missing those details. If you just need to get started and you're not sure, this is a great way to get started. So it'll prompt you for all those details to make sure you're not missing anything. You'll go through each section of your experience, you'll add all your details in there, and then it'll go to the next section and it'll keep continuing on. At the end, it will provide I believe it's a PDF that you can save and keep to your computer. So that's a great way to kind of get something going if you just need somewhere to start. And I had been talking to some recruiters before that were recruiting for intelligence agencies, and I asked them, do you like the templates? Does that defer you if a student just use a template? And they said, yeah, they actually do like that because they're used to navigating those really easily. So they do really, really like the template builder on usajobs.gov. Or if you want to make your own and then add some sections at the end and be creative with it, because sometimes this template builder doesn't give the room for that. That's the only downside to it. You might make something on your own, but make it similar in style and make it look like the template builder is another thought. So I wanted to show you.
And make sure, I just wanted to make sure, because we talked about this in length yesterday, Jess, is make sure at the end you are adding those sections that aren't provided, because if you don't add it, they don't know. So if you have had a publication, if you have volunteer experience or any of those sections we talked about, make sure you add it in the additional experience sections.
Right. So sometimes at the end, it may not prompt you for all that. I think there is a section that says like additional information or something like that, where you can kind of be a little bit creative with it. But keep in mind, if you make your own and then upload it, you might have more freedom or more space or more ways to do things. So that is the one downside with the template builder. But make sure to do that. Some other things that I want to point out while you're in here, there are some tips. I would absolutely recommend that you read through these things. Absolutely. It also tells you what not to do.
Yeah.
So absolutely keep those in mind as well. Okay.
Yeah, and some of the examples you will find online, like if you just do a general federal resume example, a lot of them have their social security number listed. Please don't do that. Even on USA Jobs, it tells you not to do that. Don't add a photo. Don't do any of those things. Just follow whatever it says.
One other thing that I wanted to show you in USA Jobs is if you go to the main site, and then you scroll to the very, very bottom on here, there's events. So a lot of the information that we're sharing with you today are things that we've learned through attending many of these webinars and events and speaking with recruiters and things like that. But you can hear it straight from the source if you attend some of these, if you want some more information as well. So there's all sorts of hiring events, information, things that you can attend. But I would recommend to you that you take a look at these too. I know there are webinars on federal resumes. We've attended them. If you want to watch some of those, absolutely hop on. I think there's one at the end of the month coming up. So if you want some more information, absolutely attend those. Okay. So again, that's on usajobs.gov. And you can find that on their main site just at the end. Scroll to the bottom to events.
Jess and I try to go to at least once every 6 months, once a year. We just go to refreshers, and we encourage you guys to do the same. They are completely free, and they may not be the most exciting thing you've ever seen in your life, but they're really helpful, and they tell you step by step a lot more in depth than what we've gone over today.
That's right. Okay, so what else do you have to share with them? I think we have one more thing for you, right?
Yeah, one thing Jess and I have kind of discovered as we've been helping students over the years are different resources to help you kind of navigate what are the most important words to make sure you're putting on your resume. So we have found something called TagCrowd, and it is awesome. So I'm just going to share this. Give me the thumbs up when you see it. Thank you. So TagCrowd is literally, you copy and paste the job description. You can do this for civilian jobs as well. And it actually will generate a list of words that are mentioned more than others. So I chose a wildlife biologist because that's what most of my students are applying to. If you can see, this is what a job posting looks like, all the locations, there's a lot of locations for this one. Responsibilities is usually where you want to start with copying and pasting. You don't want to copy and paste everything on the job description, because the word that's used the most is like employment and things like that are not necessarily important to have on your resume, but responsibilities is definitely one. So copy and paste, go to TagCrowd, just simply paste, visualize. Sometimes it takes a little bit. And here are some words you absolutely want to make sure you have on your resume for your federal resume. And like I said, you can absolutely use these for federal. I would do this for the responsibility section, as well as requirements, especially in this section, especially if it's one of those positions where you have to have a lot of certifications, and definitely qualifications. Where's the other one? How you will be evaluated. Every job is going to be a little different. So here you can see oral communication, planning and evaluating. So these are also those KSAs we're talking about that you want to make sure that you're going to have in there. And I hope that helps. We've had a lot of success with students using this. I know people in my own family have used this and it's helped them get jobs. So it's another resource we can give you to kind of send you on your way as you continue on your federal job journey. And that, I think, Jess, is what we have.
Right. So those are the main resources to get you started. Those are the main differences between the civilian and the federal resumes. We've gotten slightly over our time today, so if any of you need to hop off, feel free. We are going to hang out and answer a couple questions now. So thank you all for attending. If you would like to stay on, you're welcome to. If you would like to listen to us answer a couple questions, we'll hang on for a little bit longer and answer some questions. But if any of you need to go, we completely understand. And thanks for attending today. All
Okay,
right.
so first one from the chat came from Colin, and it's actually two questions. How much of an impact does saying that the employer cannot contact a previous employer in a resume have? Is it bad to say they cannot contact them?
So remember, in the federal realm, their background checks are also pretty severe. So if you say no, it's not, I don't think it's going to have like a huge impact, but it will raise questions. And if they do the background check and you're saying no because you were fired or something along those lines, they're going to find out anyway, because that's just how those background checks work. I've had students say no and they still got interviews. I've had students say yes, they still get interviews. I think that's my best answer. Jess, what do you think about that?
I think it just depends on the job, the department, and what's going on. So I'm sorry, I don't have a straight shot answer for you. I'm so sorry. I can't answer that for the whoever it might be. I think it depends on what you're doing, who you're applying to. I think it's really individualized. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and it definitely depends on why you're saying no. I think that is probably the thing that I would make sure that you kind of think about is, what about this is making you say no? And that's something you should definitely make an appointment with one of us and we can talk to you about that, because again, like Jess said, it's very individualized.
Yeah. All right, what else do we have?
Okay, the next one comes from Craig and it says, are you supposed to bullet each point in the duties and accomplishments section? What format is best?
I've actually seen both ways. So I've seen people do bullets, and I've also seen people kind of do more of the paragraph style and information kind of style for federal resumes. I think it's subjective. What do you think, Jessie?
I agree 100%, especially in different industries. I've seen like more engineering, they go bullet, and then more humanities, sometimes they write out more things. I don't know, you've had more experience in that field, but that's kind of what I've seen.
Yeah, I don't think there's I don't think there's a best way, I guess I would say. I guess I'd have to see your resume kind of. Federal resumes are so individualized. So that's why we just wanted to do an introduction, because it depends on your information. And I really think it depends on what looks most effective for what you have. So we could definitely take a look at it, but I think either are okay if that's what you're asking. I think either are okay.
Okay, so the next one came from Grace, and she said, throughout high school, I worked at a little ice cream shop that was paid under the table. Due to this, is it something that should not be included on a resume, either federal or civilian?
I actually love that question because I think we all have those experiences, whether it was, working at an ice cream shop or babysitting or mowing someone's lawn. Jess, what do you think about this? Because I feel like we both probably think the same thing.
Did you pay taxes on it? That would be my question.
No.
She said no.
So Jessie, what were you gonna say on this?
I was gonna say most of the time those under the table type positions are not needed to be put on your resume. And the problem is, if you're applying, and I'm making this completely up, you're applying to a ice cream specialist for the government, and they really want that long-term experience, then maybe we'd have a discussion about it. But no, I really think that although I'm sure you had great customer service skills, it may be one of those things we just don't put in. Yeah. I don't put that I worked at Cold Stone Creamery in high school on any of my resumes anymore. It's not that related to what I'm applying
anymore, because it's so old too. Yeah, that as well. And yeah, if you weren't paying tax, that's my question, is like, oh, if you weren't paying taxes on it, the person who's going to employ you is the government, and you weren't, paying back to the government. So that's kind of, so just a thought.
But great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question before, but now I'm going to remember it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That was the last one from the chat.
Okay.
And thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, and thanks, Danica, for monitoring that.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, that's what we have for today. If any of you have any other questions, feel free to set up an appointment. Thanks so much, and take care.
Thank you.